Back in 2017, I began a full restoration of my 96 Bayliner by tearing it apart all the way down to the hull. From there, I began the rebuilding process, which included learning to fiberglass, rebuilding an engine and outdrive, learning to fair and paint, and even upholstery. Now, I've bought a 28-foot cabin cruiser, and I'm starting all over. Welcome, my name's Jared. Now get ready, because it's going to be a ship show. Alright guys, I think it is officially time. Can't put this off any longer, the weather's warm. We got to figure out what is going to happen with this thing. So, before I put this thing back in the boat, I want to test as much stuff as possible because that process is not fun. So, I want to see what I can find out at this stage before it goes back in. Just to recap where we're at, I have gone through, kind of double checked all the connectors, tightened all the hose clamps, all that kind of stuff. But I'm bound to have forgotten something. So I want to kind of walk through this process kind of step by step. I've spent hours just going through this in my head trying to figure out what might I have forgotten that could be a huge problem. I think I have everything kind of figured out as much as I can at this point. So I got the coolant topped off, the oil, the power steering fluid. Now as soon as those run, they're going to kind of suck and draw through the system, fill up the oil filter, all that kind of stuff. So if it does start and run, I'm going to stop it somewhat quickly so I can then top off all the fluids and make sure everything's at the right level. But that is a big if it runs. So I guess it's time to just start walking through this thing. So just to show what I have set up here, I made this little box. I found some gauges on eBay. They were like, not open box, but they were kind of like new, but had defects in the plating on here, so I got them for a really good deal. So they're actually new gauges. So I built this little box with a key switch, so I kind of have as much critical information as I can really get without having the appropriate Rinda scan tool, which I do have on the way. But this is just the basics. So I got my water temperature, oil pressure, and voltmeter. I did also purchase a fuel injection pressure test kit that screws onto the Schrader valve on the fuel rail. Got the battery hooked up back here. So the first thing I'm gonna do, down here I have a 3/8 fuel line running into a little fuel container here of some brand new ethanol-free gas. You saw me fill up this as much as I can with fuel so we're not pumping air. Try and kind of prime the system. So the first thing I want to do, I'm going to go ahead and turn the key and listen for that fuel pump, which in theory should run for a second or two. It may take a couple of clicks of that key to actually build up some fuel pressure. And once I have some fuel pressure on the system, I'm going to go around and inspect as much as I can for fuel leaks around the fuel lines, the injectors, all that kind of stuff, fuel pressure regulator. So that's going to be step one. So without further ado, let's go ahead and do that. Okay, well we have fuel pressure. That is a very good sign. So as I said, I'm gonna walk around here and check for leaks anywhere. The fact that it's sort of holding pressure to some degree seems like a good sign. Now, I don't know if this goes up and holds, so there's really nothing you're gonna be able to see here because there's gonna be a lot of peeking in some tight spaces. So I'm just gonna go around and check for things and then we'll report back. Not seeing and or smelling anything, which is a pretty good sign. Let's move on to the next step. Okay, so the next thing we need to do is check for water leaks. So for my water intake setup, what I have here is the existing 1.25" hose that goes to the transom. I bought a 1.25" hose barb to threaded fitting, 1.25" threaded fitting to 3/4 inch adapter, and a 3/4 inch to garden hose fitting. Put that all together with some sealant, clamped it up, got the garden hose hooked up here, so I'm going to go slowly turn on the garden hose. This is completely full of air right now, so it might take a second to bleed that air out of the system, but I also don't know, I guess we'll find out, but I don't know if water will be able to get past the impeller on its own, or if nothing's gonna come out of here until we actually run the motor. So let's get some water into this thing and start checking for water leaks. So right now I'm just cracking the garden hose to let some of the air out, and once the water starts coming out, I'll retighten it. So that at least eliminates a bunch of air from the system. Oh, while we're waiting on this, oh, there's the water. One other thing I forgot to mention is I have the two power steering lines connected to each other right now, so it'll just recirculate through the system. I have the quick connects on here. If you don't, I don't know. You might have to make some sort of a fitting. I don't know if they sell anything for that, but anyway, that's what I got going on. Okay, so I'm gonna let this water run for a couple of minutes and just kind of keep an eye out for leaks around. I can hear things going on, so I think the water is actually able to get into the system. So I'm gonna let it go for a couple minutes and keep an eye out for water leaks. There's gotta be one hose clamp I forgot. I don't know if you can see that, but there is now water coming out of the exhaust manifold, which is a good sign. I keep trying to come up with reasons why I shouldn't just try and start it. Not finding any. I think it's time. Kind of wish I had like a blast cabinet to hide behind, but unfortunately I'm like staring at a piston that's about to blow right into my face. Here we go. Just kidding. Why no starter? Hold that thought. Well, ran through as much diagnosis as I could, got the multimeter out, started probing things, checking things. Neutral safety switch was good. I was getting power from the key down to the 10-pin harness on the engine. The starter relay was getting power, clicking. I thought I checked this before, but I guess I didn't. So then I went back and checked the yellow-red wire on the starter solenoid, which gets power when you turn the key, and it was getting 12 volts. So after all that, the problem is my brand new starter. Nope. Starter's fine. I'm an idiot. I actually was in the process, you can tell time's passed here. I have been in the process for the last like 2 weeks of dealing with Mercury and so I don't want to name names here, especially because it's not their fault at the end of the day, but I went back to the supplier that I bought my brand new OEM starter from and said, hey, my starter's dead on arrival, but they said it's past 30 days, so we can't help you. You have to go through the Mercury warranty process, which has to be done through a certified Mercury dealer service center, of which there's like one close to me. The second closest is an hour away. Regardless, I didn't want to be out $250, so I contacted both of them, trying to kind of double my odds, went through both. Both guys said, all right, let me check with Mercury, we'll get back to you. Nothing. Followed up with them. Oh yeah, didn't get around to it. I'll follow up with Mercury today. Get back to you by the end of the week. Nothing from either. I'm starting to gather that if you didn't buy a part from them directly, they don't want to help you. So the good news is the starter's fine and I don't need to go through that process. The bad news is if I ever do need to go through that process, apparently it's useless. Anyway, so back to me being an idiot. On the starter, I was so confident that I had it wired perfectly from the get-go. It didn't even occur to me that there's a second terminal on the starter, and I was actually connecting the red-yellow wire to the wrong one. So yes, I was getting 12 volts to that terminal, but it was on the wrong one. So I've got that sorted out. The starter is back on. And one other thing has happened since the last video, which was not necessary for this initial startup and test, but it's super nice now that I have it. I hadn't gotten it in the mail yet, but I now have this guy, which is the Rinda Diacom. It's basically the computer-based version of the scan tool that you can buy. So it plugs in with USB, and this goes to the 555 PCM. So I'm gonna get this plugged in. We're all good to go. Of course, somebody's mowing right now, which is the least opportune time ever. Let's get this thing plugged in, ready to go, and officially give it the first try. I tested the starter last night. It turns. I didn't try and start it. I just, real quick, so we know the starter's working. So in theory, we should be good. So let's see what happens. Okay, so you might be wondering why I stopped it right away. I just wanted to run it for a few seconds, get it up, like not sputter, and just let it run for, I don't know, 20 seconds. Because I need to check the oil level, check the fluid levels of the power steering pump now that things are kind of moving through the system. Obviously, I'm going to have to maintain some of those other things after it runs for a little bit longer, but the oil, I definitely want to get checked real quick, so I'm going to go do that. And then should be able to start it up and let it run for a little bit and start monitoring some of the values on the computer. So let me get that oil checked and we'll be right back. Okay, liquid levels are topped off. Check the oil, add a little bit more to bring it up to the full line. Check the power steering reservoir, same there. Got the key in the on position. We're connected on the computer here, so I'm gonna start it up here, let it idle for a little bit and keep an eye on some of these values and see what we're dealing with. Everything on the computer is looking good so far. Just going to keep an eye on the coolant level as it starts to warm up. Same with the power steering fluid. At this point, just kind of let it run for a little bit and keep an eye on things. Check for leaks too. The one thing I don't like is the fuel pressure gauge is reading below 40, and I think it's supposed to be right around 43. Like 37, 38. I don't know if that's normal. I'll have to look that up. Let me bring you guys in. You can see what the Diacom screen looks like here. All right, guys, well, that is awesome. I am super excited that this motor ran. I ended up letting it run for maybe like 10 minutes or so, kept an eye on all the values on the Diacom, and everything just kind of looked perfect. So I'm gonna go ahead and call this one a success. The fuel pressure thing I looked into a little bit, and I think we're gonna be okay. Kind of got conflicting info on what the pressure should be. But one thing I did do is I tried removing the vacuum line from the regulator while it was running, and the fuel pressure went up to 43 PSI, which is the number that I thought it was supposed to be. So maybe that's supposed to be like the pressure of the pump, like at max or whatever. So at least it tells me that the regulator is doing something. So I'm gonna just assume that that's good for now. And if that needs to be fixed at a later point, at least I know where it is and it's not too bad to get to. With that being said, this thing I'm gonna say is good to go, which is, again, awesome news. But that also means I gotta get my button gear on the other stuff I'm working on, including finishing up the bilge, getting it painted, and the generator sitting over here. I need to verify if that's working. Gotta get all the plumbing stuff taken care of before this can go, like, there's so many things that have to get done and put back into place before this can drop in. So I got a lot of work ahead of me, but that's gonna do it for this one. I think that is enough to cover for one video. Thank you guys again for watching. If you're not already, please don't forget to subscribe, like this video, share with your friends, all that fun stuff, and appreciate all you guys that have done that. So thanks again for watching, and we'll see you in the next one. Bye.